Hello everyone. This is TV Day's Drama Digest coming to you with an extra-long deep dive that leaves no velvet curtain of the DiMera mansion unlifted. Pour yourself a generous cup of Earl Grey, settle into the high-backed armchair by the fire, and get ready for a retelling so expansive, so saturated with emotion and intrigue, that it may well feel as though you have stepped straight into Salem itself. A birthday draped in shadows, the grand hall of the DiMera estate had been transformed into a fairy tale tea room for Rachel's birthday. Tiers of rose-edged china, pink taper candles trembling in crystal sconces, and a ceiling canopy of silver balloons that swayed like cautious ghosts in the chandelier's breeze. Yet, for all the shimmer, a hush floated over the gathering. Rachel, dressed in a pastel dress that ought to have brightened any child's eyes, instead wore the delicate, faraway look of someone clutching a story too heavy for small shoulders. At the polished mahogany table sat Kristen, posture straight as a blade, eyes flickering between motherly tenderness and simmering vigilance. Brady kept a gentle hand near the teapot, as though ready to pour comfort at the slightest tremor. Across from them reclined EJ in an impeccably tailored suit whose slate color matched the inscrutable storm in his mind. He raised his cup, yet his gaze skimmed the wallpaper, searching memories, blank spaces, for a gunmetal flash he could not quite catch. Rachel's soft voice broke the hush. "Mom didn't shoot you," she reminded EJ, her words stiff with the certainty of rehearsed truth. EJ's jaw tightened. "I still don't know who did," he admitted, the confession tasting bitter on his tongue. Whoever pulled the trigger could be anywhere, maybe right under this roof. His eyes drifted toward the corridor, the one that once echoed with a single deafening crack and his own startled shout. Silence fell again, thick as wool, while the birthday girl folded her napkin so fiercely it nearly tore. Kristen's brittle calm. Kristen leaned forward, stroking Rachel's hand. "Sweetheart, this house is swarming with guards. Steel locks, armored windows, cameras in every alcove. You're safe." She spat the word safe as though daring danger to contradict her. Rachel managed a nod, but her teacup rattled against its saucer. "I'm tired," she whispered, glancing at the unopened gifts, colorful boxes that now seemed to leer like silent witnesses. "I think I'll open them tomorrow." "Of course," Brady murmured, ever the buffer between Rachel's fragile calm and the adult's sharpened grievances. He rose to escort her upstairs, but Kristen stood first, blocking the path with a sudden sweep of her arm. Porcelain rang like a bell as her hand smacked the serving tray, sending silverware skittering and tea splashing across the lace cloth. The clang ricocheted through the hall. In its wake, EJ's eyes widened, pupils dilating like a hunted stag's. For a breathless heartbeat, he was no longer at a birthday tea. He was bleeding on cold marble, the echo of a real gunshot crashing in his ears. Nightmares in the dark corridors. Midnight draped the mansion in velvet silence. Moonlight spilled through leaded windows, pulling on the checkerboard floor. That was when Rachel's scream cleaved the stillness. It was a jagged, primal cry, fear not just visited but residing. Kristen and Brady sprinted down the hallway, slippered feet skidding across Persian runners. They burst into the child's room to find her trembling against embroidered pillows, cheeks wet, eyes wider than the moon. "I heard a gunshot," Rachel sobbed, clutching her quilt like a lifeline. Kristen darted a glance at the overturned silver tray she had set earlier on the dresser, a clumsy attempt at tidying after the tea table chaos. The tray now lay in two bent halves, edges curled like wounded wings. "That noise was only the tray falling, darling," Kristen soothed, voice honey over gravel. But Brady noticed her pulse thrumming at her throat, each beat spelling out an unspoken dread. What if it wasn't just a dream? He knelt beside the bed, brushing Rachel's hair back. "You're safe," he echoed. Yet in his mind he saw the memory Rachel could not have. EJ collapsed on the foyer floor, Brady himself ripping off a bow tie to stanch the blood, and Rachel lurking on the staircase, small hand at her mouth, eyes glistening with something indefinable. Dawn with the taste of gunpowder at first light, the household reconvened in the sunroom. A place where lemony dawn usually coaxed roses to unfurl around wrought iron trellises. Today, however, the roses seemed reluctant to bloom, and the air smelled faintly of yesterday's gunpowder ghost. EJ, hair tousled from a restless night, surveyed the birthday streamers left hanging in limp defeat. Perhaps, he drawled with a half-smile that never reached his eyes, Rachel insisted we keep the decorations intact so she can remember this epic occasion. Tray crashes, nightmares, all. The remark landed like a flint on tinder. Kristen's chair scraped back with a growl, her knuckles whitening on a fresh tray held for breakfast service. The metallic clink echoed again, and EJ's gaze snapped to the silver as if expecting it to morph into a revolver. Rachel flinched, coffee-colored curls quivering. She pushed away her untouched plate. "Please stop," she whispered. "I don't like loud noises anymore." Brady's patience frayed. "EJ, if you can't temper your sarcasm around an anxious child, perhaps you should remember." EJ finished bitterly. "Believe me, I'm trying. I want nothing more than to remember who put a bullet in me." His stare flicked to Rachel, lingering a second too long. Kristen noticed and stepped protectively between them, a lioness shielding her cub. Two paths of suspicion. Was the shooter in this very room? That question sprawled like a tiger across Salem gossip columns and whispered phone calls. There were, the pundits mused, only two plausible paths, Rachel the silent witness. She might have crept downstairs that fateful night, curiosity piqued by muffled quarrels between adults, and gazed through the banister just in time to see a masked figure squeeze the trigger. What child could sleep soundly after such a vision? Her nightmares might be mere echoes of that trauma, a subconscious screening of events too horrific to articulate. Rachel the unlikely perpetrator. Though shocking, Salem has never been a sanctuary of tame plotlines. Rachel, protective of Kristen to the point of ferocity, could have mistaken a scuffle for a threat and acted on misguided courage. A family heirloom revolver had been left negligently in an unlocked display case. Tiny fingerprints were reportedly smudged near the latch, though no one would confirm the discovery publicly. A single shot rang out. EJ fell. Chaos reigned. And in the aftermath, the child was shepherded away before anyone investigated the pistol's weight in her small hands. In either case, Rachel harbors a secret. Whether it is the burden of guilt or the burden of knowledge, the weight presses her spine every time a tray clatters or a balloon pops. EJ's spiraling quest for truth. EJ's memory is a shattered mirror, fragments glinting with moments. The smell of jasmine in the foyer, the flutter of footsteps, the dim silhouette at the top of the stairs, yet never aligning into a whole. He prowls the mansion's corridors at night, brushing his fingers over spidery cracks in marble where the bullet ricocheted. He visits the security room, rewinding grainy footage that dissolves into static at the decisive moment, sabotaged, perhaps, by someone adept at concealment. He even seeks Roman's counsel in a discreet corner booth at the Brady pub. Roman reveals a chilling detail. The very night EJ was shot, Roman's old revolver vanished from a lockbox. Hours later, the gun materialized again, poorly hidden in a flower pot outside the DiMera front door. Someone with small hands could have hidden it there, Roman speculates, voice hushed. EJ's blood runs cold. Small hands. Rachel's? Or perhaps another conspirator hoping to frame the child. Kristen's tightening coil. Back at the mansion, Kristen implements a regime of protection that verges on imprisonment. Guards at every doorway, Motion detectors under the carpets, a new code on every digital lock each sunrise. Yet she cannot fortify Rachel's dreams. The girl wakes nightly screaming of echoing gunfire and a voice, EJ's voice, calling out in pain. Kristen's own nightmares are laced with guilt. She replays her earlier rage, the way she slammed that tray to the table and watched EJ flinch as though bullets were flying again. She wonders if her fury is feeding Rachel's fear, and if her fierce denial of Rachel's possible involvement is motherly love or self-preservation. Brady's moral crossroads. Brady, ever the conscience of the gathering, starts piecing together subtle inconsistencies. He recalls that, on the night of the shooting, Rachel's shoes were still damp at dawn, as if she had ventured outside in dewy grass. He finds a page in Rachel's sketchbook depicting a figure, EJ, unmistakable in his suit, surrounded by jagged red scribbles. In the corner of the drawing, a small face peers through balusters, eyes shaded in heavy charcoal. Brady confronts Kristen quietly one evening, the house asleep around them. If Rachel knows something, sheltering her from the truth may warp her forever, he pleads. Kristen's answer is a whisper edged like ice. I will never let our daughter be devoured by Salem's appetite for scandal. She is blameless. But you don't know that, Brady counters. And EJ deserves his answers. Thunder rumbles outside, the kind of storm that feels choreographed by Salem's resident weatherman, Fate. The greenhouse confrontation determined, EJ invites Rachel for a tour of the estate's greenhouse, a glass palace of orchids and rare palms, steamy and hushed, where secrets can bloom. The sun filters through panes and fractured emerald patterns, a kaleidoscope of truth and deceit. They pause beside a jasmine vine, the scent matching EJ's fleeting memory. He bends, leveling his gaze with hers. Rachel, do you ever dream about that night? Her throat constricts. Tiny hands twist in her dress. It's all right, EJ coaxes, voice soft but urgent. Whatever you remember, however frightening, I can bear it. Tears pool in Rachel's eyes, and for one heartbeat EJ sees the reflection of a muzzle flash. She opens her mouth, words trembling on the brink. A sharp voice slices the humid air. Kristen steps into the greenhouse, heels clicking like a judge's gavel. Tour is over. Her stare warns EJ that one more question will trigger a detonation no security system could contain. Whispers over Salem outside the mansion, Salem's rumor mill churns. At the Java Cafe, baristas whisper that Rachel has been spotted clutching a plush doll that smells of gun oil. At the hospital, nurses recall EJ's chart noting a bullet trajectory consistent with a low angle, striking upward, as if fired by someone much shorter than EJ himself. Podcasters dissect Kristen's every public remark, freeze-framing footage of her reaction whenever Rachel's name and the shooting share a sentence. Psychologists interviewed on daytime talk shows debate childhood trauma versus sociopathic tendency in children of volatile households. And still, the central question persists. Does EJ remember that Rachel shot him? Some swear that in the seconds before the bullet slammed into his chest he saw a pair of wide, tear-glazed eyes. Others insist he only saw the gun, a dull, impersonal eye of steel, too blinding to expose the hand behind it. Memory's final card. One sleepless night, EJ sits in his study beneath a single lamp, turning Roman's revolver over and over. His fingers find the faint indentation of a child's initial, an accidental scrape, or a brand of truth. When he closes his eyes, the memory that finally surfaces is not the instant of pain, but the moment after. He lay bleeding, ears ringing, and up the staircase Rachel stood frozen, her nightgown lit by lightning, face pale as moon milk. She pressed a finger to her lips. Whether it was a shush of guilt or a plea for silence in the face of something unseen, EJ cannot decide. But the image sears itself into place, irreversible at last. He whispers, Rachel. The name is a lament, a question, and perhaps a verdict. The road ahead morning will come, and with it Kristen's iron smile, Brady's quiet resolve, and Rachel's fragile spirit tiptoeing between innocence and confession. EJ must choose, expose what he believes and risk shattering a child. Or bury the suspicion beneath layers of DiMera discretion, forever haunted by an unfinished puzzle. Salem's streets will buzz with fresh theories, the diurnal cycle of scandal guaranteeing that no secret stays dormant. Security guards may triple, therapists may be summoned, polygraph needles may tremble. But as long as love and vengeance share the same corridors, as long as silver trays can mimic gunfire and nightmares can masquerade as memories, the question will echo. Was the gunshot in Rachel's dream or in her hand? And somewhere deep inside the mansion, beneath chandeliers that once cheered a birthday, a little girl lies awake listening to silence, wondering if truth will find her before sleep does. We hope you enjoyed it and look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe TV Days Drama Digest for more updates on Days of Our Lives.